Here I'll carry on with the introduction to critical discourse analysis and social theory. Right from the beginning, recent beginning, in 1970s, critical linguistics has been focusing on looking into various aspects of power and ideology manipulation in society. In this regard, there has been a real focus on representations of reality and discrimination in the societies and how they have been maintained or asserted in and through the language. So this has been the primary concern why critical linguistics got primacy over other forms of linguistics or applied linguistics. In such studies, it has been seen that structure works in a deterministic fashion. By that, we mean that it actually pushes people to perform certain kinds of actions, which obviously would ultimately support the structural factors or the interest of few in a society. This original source-centered approach showed little awareness of reception or agency. Humans were seen little active or the active agents in performing action rather than a kind of subjects which were forced by some external forces, sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly. In this way, critical linguistics took the responsibility to unveil or demystify language uses regarded as dehumanizing. By that we mean which rejected the idea. However, this approach rejected the idea that unmediated access to reality is almost impossible. There has to be certain mediation by certain external or structural forces, social forces, which would like to mold or change reality according to their own interest. So this just digging that deep and unveiling such structural interventions to common people was the primary and the major concern of critical linguistics in the beginning. For them, the people who started critical linguistics, from where critical discourse studies and critical discourse analysis emerged, ideology was a systematic body of ideas organized from a particular point of view and manifested in linguistic choices. So ideologies usually, as it was thought, was furthered to extend and support a certain point of view, a certain group of people, which usually are powerful or hold the reins of power. This period found Foucault's and Althusser's notion of knowledge and state apparatus, ideological state apparatus, very useful. Althusser favored a broad notion of ideology and viewed subjects as largely determined by ideological state apparatus and ultimately economic structures. And by this we simply mean that humans were and their actions were determined, were not free, were not independent, were not based on their genuine choices, but rather they were determined by certain ideological state apparatus, which is the ways through which states or the governments spread a certain kind of ideology in order to propagate their agendas. So common people just work after that agenda, are gullible and can be beguiled to follow a certain agenda promoted by a government or a powerful group of people, and therefore they fall prey to these ideological state apparatus, and in simple words, they act as subjects to certain powerful people. Going beyond classical notions of ideology as a false representation of reality, Althusser defined ideology as something which is representing the imaginary relationship of individuals to their real conditions of existence, which has obviously, according to him, a material existence. So it looks into some imaginary relationship between individuals and the kind of their material existence. which obviously is not found in the real world, and its absence was prominent in various studies. Ideology is thus a question of material existence and practices, and it's not a kind of belief or a philosophy. Rather, it was very much at the back of it, was very much based on certain material advantages, which, according to many studies, were obviously of the powerful groups or states. In this context, Althusser famously speaks of the interpolation of subjects. By that we mean transformation of subjects of individuals into subjects. So they are no more independent individuals, rather they act like a subjects to serve the interest of the bigger people, and they would speak the language the powerful people or the state would like them to speak. There has been some other recent developments in critical discourse analysis as far as inculcation of philosophical thoughts are concerned. We can see various corpus linguistic studies have also included the elements of social theory. In this regard, Baker, in his study published in 2014, adopted Foucauldian notion of discourse, which is obviously different from classical notion of discourse. He also relies on Butler's understanding of gender and how gender works through discourse, and this idea can influence the meaning-making process in various societies. O'Laren also relies on introduction of Giles and Felix in his studies. McGilchrist discusses ontological and epistemological assumptions underlying research, especially done in critical discourse studies. She focuses on the construction of social orders and stability instead of their fissures and dislocations, and she was more into the positive contributions of critical discourse studies. We can see that such as Laclau, Lafert, she discusses some key concepts in critical discourse studies, including critique, rationality, and validity. Some other interesting notable interest in critical discourse studies have been the introduction of queer theory in critical discourse studies, which has been quite recent and have been very fascinating inclusion for many researchers. Woodick has also relied on Goffman's work to analyze the interaction of various members of European Parliament. So there has been multiple influences from social theory recently, which have played an important role in the making of various critical discourse studies.